Welcome to Sales for Nerds. I'm your host and chief nerd, Ruben Swartz. If you started a business because you love serving clients but realized you didn't like the sales and marketing aspect of running that business so much, this is the podcast for you. Sales and marketing doesn't have to suck. It can actually be a lot of fun. And on this show, we're going to teach you how to connect instead of network, teach instead of market, help instead of sell, so you can keep serving people even while you're building your pipeline and growing your business. Now let's get to it. Today, I'm excited to be here with Rachel Nigro, who is an online health and fitness coach who helps you look good, feel good, act good, etc., helping you actually do all these things without feeling like you're on one of those crazy crash diets. And I'm one of those people who, let's just say I'm not a dieter. I'm relatively healthy by American standards, which doesn't mean a whole lot. But especially as I've gotten older, I've become much more conscious about how important it is to actually fuel ourselves properly, not just go to the gym, not just pump a bunch of coffee into ourselves in the morning to keep going, but to actually nourish and fuel our bodies properly. And I think one of the reasons I wanted to have Rachel on here, we've got this big shift to people working for themselves from their homes, which 95% of the time is like one of the best things that ever happened to me nutritionally, but not 100% of the time. But I thought that with so many people working from their homes, steps from their refrigerator, steps from their pantry, it'd be great to have an actual professional come in here and tell us what we should be doing, not just to eat good and feel good and so on, but to actually perform properly in our professional and personal lives. So Rachel, thanks for letting me use that long-winded introduction. Welcome to Sales for Nerds. What do you have in your glass?
Thank you so much for having me. I have a cab. It's from Josh Sellers, my first time having it.
Oh, very nice. Cheers. I'm just down the road with Spragia, and this is a Carignan, which I am not familiar with. It's usually a blending grape, and I guess the history was that it produces a lot of yield, but not necessarily the best quality. So traditionally it was thrown in blends, and now some winemakers have started trying to make wine just from this grape, and I'm drinking this one,
Wow,
and it's quite tasty.
that sounds delicious.
So Rachel, how did you get into this line of work?
So long story short, I grew up competitively horseback riding. So I always had to be in somewhat of good shape, to yield around these beasts, so to speak. And I started getting into fitness, working out as I became into my late teens a little bit more. But, all throughout like this experience with horseback riding, I always felt out of place. I always kind of felt like the chunkier kid out of all the other girls on my riding team. And so I always felt like I needed to do like some kind of restrictive diet or cut calories or couldn't eat the same way they did, even though I'm going to the gym and doing the same things they did. I always felt like I had like a belly, just kind of uncomfortable in my body. That kind of started even further back, but we're not going to go that far back. Then I went into college and I decided I wanted to do something to help people. And I knew I had this passion for fitness. I kind of had an understanding of science. And so I thought, great, I'm going to go for biology or biochem and become a chiropractor. And then I quickly learned that that's not what I want to do. I changed my major to exercise science, and I took the time to really understand, of course, while in college, how the body responds to exercise, how different types of food fuel our body, the different DNA every person has, how it's specific and individual to them. And so we graduated college, my whole class, and everybody was going off to like doctorate of physical therapy, doctorate to chiropractic. And I had no desire to do any of that still. So I decided, let me get my personal training license. This is what I love to do. Again, long story short, COVID happened and I stopped working in a gym, started working for myself. When you're working in a gym, they only pay you X amount of money. I had worked my way to the top working at Lifetime Fitness, and they were only paying me to train people. They weren't paying me to teach them anything about nutrition, teach them anything about habits, or help them make lifestyle changes. So when they came to the gym, they were only there to see me. That's it. And in return, I didn't really get the best results. So that COVID was a blessing in disguise for me because it really allowed me to take things into my own hands and work with people, all over the world, all over the country, but help them from like the inside. So I'm kind of like in their pocket with them every day along the way. Everything I do is online. So I give my clients a full nutrition, a full habit plan, and a full fitness plan. So that's kind of how I got into it, the longer story.
Okay. So we're in a place now, and I feel bad because there's so many people who grew up like you, like feeling uncomfortable about their bodies. And then, I don't want to shame anyone or make anyone feel bad. And at the same time, we sort of have this crisis of obesity and
Yeah.
all kinds of related health problems and all kinds of people who don't really live their lives all that well because they're not healthy. What should we be doing? Where have we gone wrong? And what can we as individuals do to live more healthy?
So there's this whole phenomenon, I'm sure you've heard of diet culture, right? We've been told since we're very young, eat less, train more, and we have to be skinny. The idea of skinny has changed throughout the years. But for one, I think what we can do is not listen to everything that diet culture is saying. I know that's easier said than done, but majority of this comes from big companies who are just trying to make a dollar off of our misery. And, they'll say like, oh, lose weight really fast for $20 a month. You'll get this supplement, when it's BS, and it's going to do more harm than good. So it's really important to figure out what works for you. That's why I do one-on-one coaching for my clients, because I think a one size fits all plan, it's not realistic. It's not sustainable. If I gave somebody who is just starting off the same plan that I've been doing, that I've been building for 10 years, they would crash and burn. They would fail. So the biggest thing is to not compare yourself to others on their journey, and to figure out, how can we really make this a lifestyle and not something that we're just doing quickly to lose weight.
I think that's such an important thing. And I think it's probably easier as a guy. I mean, guys, there's plenty of unhealthy messages for guys in society too, but it's not quite as relentless about our physical appearance. And so I think it's a little bit easier to say, okay, I'm going to train, I'm going to eat better, maybe I'm going to lose weight or whatever, but there isn't the constant message of you should be miserable about your body all the time. So
Right.
I don't want to necessarily compare that experience to what some of the lady listeners might have gone through. But I think it's so important to consider what you said. Like, this is not the quick fix. I've got to
Exactly.
lose X pounds in X weeks. It's, how do I want to live my life? And at least for me, it's like, how do I feel? Like, do I feel good in my body? Can my body move? Can I do things? And when I can, I notice that I interact with other people better. I perform better at work. I'm less
100%.
grouchy. Everything is
Yeah.
better. And to me, that's the big payoff. It's not that I'm going to look all that great in a swimsuit or whatever. It's, my life is just so much more enjoyable.
Yeah, I think that's a great message and motivator for other people too. A lot of the motivation behind trying to get into a new program or another diet that you've seen advertised is looking good. And that's why, like, my Instagram bio, for example, is I help you feel good so you can look good. You can do every crash diet, every quick fix under the sun. But if you're not getting your baseline figured out, and if you're not feeling good at the end of the day, you're never going to be able to sustain it, and you're never going to be able to keep those results. Something I say all of the time is focus on getting your body healthy from the inside out, and that aesthetic goal, that look that you want, it 100% will follow, and you'll feel even better while doing it.
Well, and I think we probably all know folks who are very worried about their appearance, and they, by most standards, look really good, but they're
Yeah.
so insecure about whatever imperfections they perceive that they don't show up confidently.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it's like,
Agreed.
okay, you're wasting all the effort and you're not enjoying yourself. So maybe just give yourself a little bit of grace, and you can actually show up, and you're actually going to look better because you're going to feel better about yourself. Like you say, you start with how you feel, and that translates to how you look.
And that's the hardest part, is that getting started, and almost like that letting go, surrendering, and even just trusting the process, like knowing that if you stay consistent with these healthy habits, you will reap the benefits. But a lot of time people will get into it for like a week or 2 weeks, even maybe even a full month, and then they'll have what they'll call like a moment of weakness, and they'll go, because they're probably restricting themselves a little too much over that time, and they'll see a couple pieces of pizza and some dessert, and they'll overdo it, and then it'll turn into an entire weekend of overdoing it, And then they feel like they just completely ruined that last month of hard work. And they're like, well, I can't do it, so I'm going to stop. And so that's why I really try to teach my clients about balance, about literally having your cake and eating it too. Like, I am not that health coach who's going to be like, you can't have pizza, you can't have wine, you can't have dessert. Like, I am probably the first person going for that slice of pizza, but I'm also going to grab a side of grilled chicken with it, just to kind of give you an example of that balance.
Well, I'm glad you let me off the hook a little bit, because full disclosure, I passed through the kitchen to grab the wine and I was
Yeah.
like, oh man, there's still some cookies here. And one of the bad food habits that I picked up as a kid was you always finish your food, right? Like wasting food is bad. And I think that's good, but it's just not necessarily healthy. Like whether I put it in the trash or I put it in my stomach, like it's being wasted either way. And in some ways it's more unhealthy to put it in my stomach. But
Right.
and I go to the grocery store and I couldn't care less about the cookies. But somehow
Yeah.
when they're on the counter, that's a whole different story. So I had half a cookie because there was a half cookie out there, and that's fine.
Yeah.
Life will go on. One of the things I noticed over the past decade was, I sort of had the default eating habits of you wake up, you have cereal, pancakes, maybe some eggs, something like that. Then maybe you have a snack. Then you have lunch is typically something like a sandwich, or it's rice or noodles with some kind of food on it, or it's pizza. And then the thing I really noticed is about 3 o'clock, I would just be so sleepy, like
Yeah.
could not stay awake. I'd go get coffee, I'd get cola, and couldn't quite, like, I just couldn't keep my eyes open. And of course, you have kids, you have work, you have all these, but even when I was
Absolutely.
sleeping well, I noticed I was just like crashing in the afternoon. And then I would want chocolate and all these other things. And
Yeah.
one of the best things I did was, for the most part, I have a salad at lunch and I just have coffee for breakfast. I'm not saying that's right for everybody, but the thing that's really
Get
cool
into that
about
in a
that.
few minutes.
Sorry.
I said we'll get into your coffee for breakfast.
Okay, great. But the thing that I love about it is, first of all, I actually really like eating salad now, which seems nuts to my younger self.
Yeah.
But the afternoon, I'm just fine. Like I
Okay.
don't have that crash.
Yeah.
And
You're more energized.
then like once you see it, you can't unsee it. And hear all these people. These days, you get on the Zoom call with people. You're not necessarily in the office with them, but at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, they're like, "Oh man, hold on, I need my third cup of coffee or whatever." And um, realize that for decades, I haven't necessarily been fueling my body all that well. I was taking what the default was
Mhm.
and saying, "Oh, well, I'm relatively healthy. I didn't get the fries with a sandwich."
Right.
But I still was putting myself through what the sort of the agricultural industrial complex found it most profitable to serve me, rather than what would be most nourishing for my body.
100%. And that's, I think also because we think like, or we were told maybe growing up, like these cleaner foods, these salads aren't yummy. They don't taste good. But that's not true. We know that now. We know we learn how to make them taste good. What we don't realize is the addiction we get to these processed foods that are filled with refined sugars and just if so many ingredients that you can't even read the label. It's one of my best tips I can give to anybody. If you can't pronounce the word on the label, if you don't know what it is, it probably shouldn't be going into your body. And
That's such a
so,
great point.
yeah. And so when like grocery shopping, a lot of people just will look at the calories on the nutrition label. I want to encourage them to look at not just the calories. Number one, the ingredients. To be honest with you, I don't even look at the calories. I look at the ingredients, and then I look at the macronutrients, the carbs, fats, and protein. I want to see how much fat is in it, how much saturated fat. Not necessarily that that's something that's bad, but how am I going to be able to balance something that's a little bit higher fat into my meal, into my day? And is there any protein in it? If not, how am I going to supplement protein another way? But anyway, my point is with these nutrition labels or with these processed foods anyway, we really want to try and limit them as much as possible. And like I said, like I'm not telling you not to have them,
Mm-hmm.
but even like bringing them into our house, especially for us folks who work from home,
Mm-hmm.
it's literally setting you up for failure. Like I'm sure
Mm-hmm.
everybody right now, we're like a week past Halloween, a week and a half. I'm sure everybody is still feeling some kind of sugar withdrawal. I know I like had more Reese's than I wanted, but I enjoyed them. And I just didn't feel good the past couple of days after having them. And now, like you said, I still have them in my house. Now I'm craving them because I incorporated them into my diet for a couple of days because they are kind of like a drug in that way, that kind of refined sugar.
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned that because we had a party and we ended up with a bunch of leftover pizza. And again, I was like, I don't want to throw it away. So I was
Mhm.
basically eating pizza for 2 or 3 days till some of my kids' friends came because they heard we had extra pizza and they just took it
Yeah,
all. But I
please.
wasn't having my salad for lunch. And I was like, man, how did I
Yeah.
make it through feeling like this day after day?
Yeah. So that's kind of like a great example of how I would teach, like you, let's say you were my client, balance. I would say, absolutely still have that pizza, but maybe you still have your salad with it to get your nutrients in. And you don't have to have the salad as well, but where are we going to fuel our body throughout the rest of that day?
Well, and we can use me as the guinea pig in a second
Yeah.
because we were going to come back to my coffee anyway. But basically, what I do for the most part is I have my coffee, I have my salad, I have, depending on how hungry I am, just a salad, or maybe today I had some soup with it, some nuts, something like that, maybe. And then dinner, we've got family, we've got schedules, we got all kinds of preferences. So I'm just like, I'm going to be as flexible as possible with dinner and just
Yeah.
go with the flow. And I feel like that works reasonably well for me at this stage. Probably in a few years, my metabolism will slow even further and I'll have to be more conscientious about dinner. But I know you said a lot of this is really being custom to the individual.
Yeah.
And of course, you can't do that for everyone listening to the podcast. But what are some general things you would advise people to look at, to do, to not do, et cetera?
Well, I actually want to circle back to your coffee statement because this is something that busy people working 9 to 5, anybody working from home, anybody working a job actually does a
Mm-hmm.
lot, is first thing in the morning, grab that coffee. And you might feel okay drinking that coffee. Like you said, maybe in a couple of years, your metabolism might catch up to you. But having coffee on an empty stomach can mess with our hormones. So think about it like this. In the morning, the whole point of breakfast, literally the word break fast, right? As simple as it can be, is to break your fast from not eating for 8, 9, 10, 12 hours from the night before. When you put coffee in your body first thing on an empty stomach, coffee will increase your cortisol hormone, that stress hormone, and that's kind of what helps gets us going, releases those endorphins in the morning, makes us energized. So when you're doing that on an empty stomach, your coffee doesn't have anything to help absorb it and slow it down. If you're drinking coffee or like an espresso shot and just get wired after it,
So
is
I've
that,
done that. I have a little Nespresso, which is basically
yeah,
like it's
I have one too.
probably
Yeah.
about half a cup of coffee's worth of caffeine.
Yeah. Well, your body's used to it now because that's what you do every morning. But even though you might not feel the adverse effects from having coffee on an empty stomach, it can have more underlying effects and play a role in hormone disruption over time. So
Okay.
I always encourage everybody to have food and water before coffee.
What if you just have water? Hypothetically, of course.
Not ideal. I
Not
mean,
ideal.
better, but the whole point is to have something in your stomach to help your body absorb that caffeine so it doesn't throw your hormones out of whack. And maybe this example isn't good for you because you're feeling energized in the afternoon now, but maybe somebody who has that coffee on an empty stomach and then pushes breakfast off a couple of hours and is still experiencing that afternoon crash, that could be changed from just having food before drinking that coffee.
Okay. Now,
Simple.
everything you're saying makes sense. My issue is I realize I'm just not hungry in the morning.
Yeah.
And it took me,
Go ahead.
I mean, for a while, like I was so used to eating breakfast. And then even when I wasn't hungry, I would eat it because like, well, I don't want to get hungry at 10 o'clock or,
Right.
okay, I'm not super hungry, but I have a workout or I'm going on a hike or something. And eventually I was like, I just like, if I put food in my body first thing in the morning, I just don't like it.
Yeah. You feel kind of sluggish after it.
Yeah.
That totally makes sense. So not being hungry, like you feel like you can go until lunch not being without feeling
Yeah.
hungry.
Yep.
So
I can go play basketball. I can go
yeah.
hike. I can do whatever. I have great energy and like, I'm not hungry. It's really weird.
Yeah. I mean, listen, this is why I preach like everything is specific to each person. If it's working for you now, amazing, great. My concern is just it almost catching up to you in the future, you experiencing something a little bit deeper that we may not be able to fix through food. I always think like we can heal everything through food, but we have two hunger hormones. They're called leptin and ghrelin. They kind of work hand in hand. One tells us we're hungry, one kind of suppresses our appetite. That just tells me that your hunger hormones, your brain is signaling to your hormones, or to your body rather, that something's a little bit off, which is why you're not getting that hunger feeling. Being hungry is normal. It's a good sign. So if you're not hungry, you kind of almost have to like kickstart your metabolism to feel hungry again. And listen, I'm not saying that is the case. It's just one example. If you're feeling good, I say keep doing what you're doing. If you want to just make sure you're doing everything right for your health, then I would encourage you getting food in the morning.
So it's
Even if
interesting.
it's small.
Interesting you say that, and I don't have the full background or scientific vocabulary to describe this, but I really like feeling hungry. I realized that I had spent a lot of time trying to avoid the feeling of hunger because I would get hangry. And I think looking back, it's because I ate a lot of processed stuff with a lot of simple sugars.
Makes sense.
So I would kind of go through those peaks and valleys, and it was like, oh, well, I don't want to get stuck in the valley, so I'm going to eat some more. And what I've noticed when I'm a little more conscientious about what I'm eating is I get hungry, but it's not like, oh my gosh, I'm hangry, I'm going to strangle someone if I can't find a Snickers bar. It's more like, oh, I should start thinking about eating in the next hour or two. And it's actually a really pleasant feeling. Like, it's like, oh, this is what your body is supposed to do, right? It's supposed to go through these cycles, and it's totally okay to be hungry. And it doesn't have to mean that you crash and that you're going to be miserable to be around.
100%. I totally agree with that. There's just, in terms of like metabolism, and listen, if you, like I said, you're feeling good, you're feeling amazing. My goal is to kind of take it to the next level now. So my boyfriend actually does a great example of this. So, when you go to a mechanic, you usually go because your car, let's say like your tires need to be replaced. You go when like something's wrong.
Yep.
What if you went when you're feeling good and you want to feel even better? So what if you went like, okay, your car is great, you're driving a Toyota, but you want to get the speed up to like a Ferrari. I don't know cars, so that's a good example, but that's just how he explains it, which I think is such a light bulb for some people. Like, all right, you feel good, but now how can we get you feeling better? Right? And you might not even realize that you think you feel amazing now. Adding in a few little tweaks might help you feel so much better.
So let's start with like the real baseline, like people who are really like, oh my gosh, like the Toyota is belching smoke, and we just want to make sure that it's running properly. And then let's get to how do we make this thing a Ferrari?
Perfect. So this is a very unpopular opinion, but I think maybe not very unpopular. I would say more so like when you reach out to somebody like a fitness coach, they're going to say like, all right, you need to train, you need to eat healthy, you need to cut your calories. I disagree. I think that comes last. Sleep, stress management, making sure your body is just your basics are taken care of, you're hydrated, that all comes first. So sleep and stress management, first two things you need to get down. If you're not getting 8 hours of restful sleep, then you can't even begin to ask your body to feel good. Like, it's just not right to ask your body to feel good, to lose weight, to work 8 hours a day, take care of your kids, whatever you need to do, you have on your plate that day. Sleep is most important. 7 hours minimum, and it needs to be good sleep too. Not tossing and turning, not having the TV on all night. So I would start with sleep. My best tips for getting good sleep is putting your phone away right before bed, which I know is really, really hard, especially for somebody, let's say, who owns their own business. We're working from the second we go to sleep to the second we wake up, or vice versa, the second we wake up to the second we go to bed. But think about, if you're running on E, how is your business going to expand? How are you going to be able to take it to the next level if you're not taken care of? So decompressing, getting your eyes away from the unnatural blue light that we're looking at on the computer every day. Blue light is toxic to our brains. We weren't created to stare at a computer. So limiting that at night, swapping out the TV for a book or an audio book, even just listening to something. You can take something such as magnesium to help you get to bed. Let's see what else. Sleep tips. Limiting your water before you go to sleep is big too. So like a lot of people will try to get that gallon in a day, and then be up all night running to the bathroom. Like for me, like right now, usually between 5 to 7, I'm really trying to slow it down on the water intake.
Okay. So step one, make sure your sleep foundation is there.
Yeah.
I think that's such an important point. And I think you're right. We usually do it backwards. We think of sleep last, something is that's almost optional in our culture. And then we wonder
Yeah.
why everything is so hard. And then secondly, you said stress management, which is also such an important thing. And I think there's so much stress eating. And
Yeah.
regardless of the stress eating, it's just not good
It's just
to be
stress
in
too.
constant stress, right? Stress is supposed to be a temporary response to a situation. It's not supposed to be the default state. And somehow we seem to have forgotten that.
Yeah. So this is actually the topic every month on Instagram. I do like different topics. So this month I'm focusing more on stress management, good sleep, positive biofeedback, it's called. So biofeedback is basically how your body communicates with you. Negative biofeedback is feeling tired, feeling anxious, feeling bloated, basically like any not so good feeling. Positive biofeedback is feeling well rested. Signs of hunger is a sign of positive biofeedback, but it can also be a sign of negative. So that one's a little wonky. But feeling overwhelmed, those are all negative signs of your body just not running right. So anyway, my point is my whole topic is on stress management. That's what I've been posting about. So my post today is all on this exactly. So our brains perceive stress no matter, I'm sorry, our brain will perceive physical or mental stress the same way. It can't tell the difference. So if you break your arm or get your heart broken, our brain's going to be stressed. It doesn't matter what the source is. So believe it or not, intense activity, high intensity interval training in general, working out is a stressor on our body, but it's a controlled stress in some ways. Depends on
Right.
who's doing it. So even just managing that, like to give you an example, I have a client who has a very high stress job, high stress life, up every day at 5 a.m., has 2 kids about to go to college, works out 5 to 6 days a week when we started, and she's in her mid 40s and could not for the life of her lose weight, was stuck at the same weight for 2 years. And so I took a look at everything she was doing when we started, and I realized you're doing high intensity cardio multiple times a week. You're lifting heavy weights every single day. We're cutting things back. I'm decreasing your cardio. I'm decreasing your strength training, and I'm increasing your calories. Being in a calorie deficit is a stressor as well. And guess what? She started losing weight for the first time in 2 years. So my point is you might be doing something that you think is a de-stressor, like example, like high intensity interval training, working out every day, pushing yourself, staying awake to work. You think like, all right, I'm getting this stress done tonight, so I don't have to do it tomorrow, but it's doing more harm than good. So if you live a very high stress lifestyle, or take a look, readjust, reflect on everything that you're doing outside, because it might be hurting you.
And I think that's true for so many small business owners. It's
Yep.
inherently kind of stressful. And
Yeah.
it's
Oh
very easy
yeah.
to get inside your own head and make it worse.
Absolutely.
All right. So let's suppose that we have now snapped our fingers. We're
Yeah.
sleeping great. We're de-stressed. You know, if you're listening to this and you're like, hold on, give me a month. I need to work on this stuff. And now you're back.
Okay.
What should people be doing next?
Next comes nutrition.
Okay.
So another unpopular opinion as a fitness coach is fitness more so in terms of like weight loss, just getting you healthy, going to the gym, strength training, least of my concerns when you come to me. Like I said, first two, stress management, sleep. But if we don't have a good relationship built with food, if we don't know how to fuel our bodies properly, you're wasting your time in the gym.
Mm-hmm.
So you could lift all these weights, you could do all this cardio, but we're just talking in terms of nutrition now. If you're not fueling your body, if you're not getting enough protein in, then you're not going to build any muscle. So nutrition comes first in terms of nutrition versus fitness, I guess we'll say. And then I would focus on that by just learning about food. So many people don't understand the macronutrient makeup of food. And that's what I do. I'm a macronutrient coach. So each macronutrient, your carbs, fats, and protein, I'll give you guys a quick crash course on tracking your macros right now, plays a very big role in your body. So your carbs, which a lot of people think is the enemy, right? Everybody says carbs are no good. We shouldn't be eating carbs. That's actually our energy source. Yeah, there's healthy carbs and more unhealthy carbs, but just think in general, carbs are your energy source. We're not going to go too much into the other details about them for now. And we have fats. Fats, I like to think of our hormone balancer. So any nutrients that you eat, if there's no fat paired with it, so like if you're eating vegetables and you're not eating it with any kind of fat, your body's not going to absorb those nutrients. So fats is almost how we get our nutrients to keep our hormones balanced, keep our body happy. And then protein helps you build and maintain lean muscle. And everybody wants to look toned, right? I think for the most part, everybody I talk to at least, you're not going to get anywhere if you're not giving your body enough protein. Even so, let's just talk in terms of like longevity. Like as we age, we lose a lot of muscle. We increase the risk of falling, losing balance, hurting ourselves. We need that protein to make sure we just have strong muscles to keep our frame supported. So the whole thing I teach with tracking your macros is it's really a science. Everybody has their own macros. My macros are going to be calculated just for me. Yours will be calculated for you. And I take into consideration your goal, your lifestyle, how much you're currently eating. So if you're under eating a lot right now versus overeating, and then I give you a macronutrient goal to hit. While we're doing this macronutrient goal, and a lot of people, this is where they get scared off of, is having to track and use something like MyFitnessPal to keep track of it. They say like, oh no, like I've calorie counted in the past, like it's too restrictive. But this is where I like to encourage people to have a change in perspective towards it. When we hear calorie counting, we think like, how can I keep these calories as low as possible to keep my food intake as low as possible to be skinnier? But with tracking your macros, I want you to think of it as an opportunity to learn how to fuel your specific body, to learn how food affects your body, to learn how much you need to eat to maintain your goal, take your goal to the next level, and really just feel really good. So back to what I was saying, a lot of people don't understand the makeup of food. Just to give you an example, like I had a client say like, I didn't realize that an apple was a carb. Like that might sound silly, like you might know it, but some people may not. So like entering that food into MyFitnessPal and just taking a look at it, like, wow, chicken has this much protein in it. Like I can reach my protein goal by eating this food. Like, great, I'm going to incorporate it into my diet.
So when you say tracking your macros, for people who are not familiar with this term, you mean, is this grams of carbs, fat, and protein per day?
Yep, exactly.
Okay. And
So
I know it's going to be different for everybody, but like, what's like sort of the order of magnitude of the kind of numbers that we're talking about here?
I'm going to tell you, but I want to explain it a little bit more for anybody who's never heard of this. So think of your tracking your macros kind of like a daily budget. So I'm going to budget you 150 grams of protein a day, 200 grams of carbs a day, and 50 grams of fat a day. If you consistently hit that budget and get within a couple of grams, you're going to reach your goal. It's science. As long as we have good sleep, you're getting your stress managed, you're getting hydrated, you're being consistent, you're going to reach that goal if you hit that number. You're going to feel really good while doing it too. So a general rule of thumb for macros, for protein at least, this is way higher than a lot of people normally eat, can be anywhere from 0.7 to 1.1 grams of protein per pound of body weight. So just to give you an easy math example, if you weigh 150 pounds and you want to maintain your weight at 150 pounds of straight muscle, you want to get toned, you want to get lean, you want to feel strong, I would recommend you eat 150 grams of protein a day. Make sense?
Okay. Yep.
With carbs, I know you can go online and search a macro calculator. I don't love them because they don't take into consideration where your metabolism is at when we're starting. But you can figure out like your total daily energy expenditure, which I'm getting way deep into it. I don't want to confuse anybody, but these numbers I could go on about for hours. And then we have our carbs. Our carbs are important too. And I think a good rule of thumb for women is to never be under 150 grams of carbs, which most women, even most men, are eating less than that every single day. And, we're never really taught how much we need to eat for our body. But But again, like it's incredible how many times I've increased somebody's calories and they start losing weight, or they just start losing inches off their stomach, even if it's not pounds on the scale. And then our fats is dependent too. I don't want to just throw these numbers, but this is how I calculate it. I do anywhere from 25% to 35% of your body weight for fats.
In
So that'll
grams
kind of
of fat.
grams. Yeah.
Okay. Just that way people have like an order of magnitude idea of
Yeah.
it's like 100-ish, 200-ish, somewhere around there. It's not like a million and
Yeah.
it's not three. And
No, it depends. It
so
depends.
it's all going to depend, right? So, and then you brought up something else that I think is really interesting, right? That apples are carbs, salads
Yeah.
are carbs.
Yeah.
Like we have this carb is bad mentality because a lot of the carbs we eat are processed junk and they're really not doing good things for us. But the stuff we're supposed to eat more of, the vegetables and the fruits, that's also carbs.
Yeah.
It's just
So
not refined, right?
exactly. So there's two types of carbs. You have complex carbs and you have simple carbs. Think of like your fruits and vegetables for the most part. Vegetables like potatoes get kind of awkward in there because they're a
Right.
starchy vegetable. So like your bananas, your berries, your spinach, think of those as simple. Your body's going to absorb those nutrients really quickly. So that may be why like you might eat a salad, but you're going to feel hungry like 2 hours later because your body breaks down that food a lot quicker, as opposed to if you had a salad with potatoes in it or a salad with rice in it. That's a more complex carb that your body absorbs throughout the day. So you'll feel more energy from that carb. You'll reap the benefits of it for longer. So like a simple carb, I suggest like a banana immediately post workout, post intense sweaty workout. So you can replenish that carb that you just burnt a little bit more. And then if you want something that's going to keep you fuller for longer for like a good meal, then I would say more complex carb.
When you're looking at a nutrition label, it's got these things listed, right? Per serving, here's how much fat, here's how much protein, here's the carbs. And now they say, I think it's like included sugars and added sugars are listed separately. Is that
Yeah,
something we should be paying attention to?
absolutely. So believe it or not, I actually used to not pay attention to added sugar. I just was, I was younger. I was like, I don't need to worry about this. And then as I begin to get a little bit older, I start to feel sugar differently.
Mm-hmm.
Like I'll
Mm-hmm.
have like a Reese's, for example, and
Mm-hmm.
I'll get an instant brain fog from it.
Yes.
And it's also because I limit it a lot now. But yeah, anything that has added sugar, and this is a great tip for people who work from home, even just in general, if you want to live that overall healthier lifestyle, I try not to bring anything with added sugar into my household. I think it's just, you're gonna crave a snack. It's gonna be there. It's gonna be something easy to grab. And I personally don't want to put that food in my body. If it's there and I'm in a pinch, yeah,
Yep.
I'm gonna grab it. And I'm not gonna feel so great about it. But at the end of the day, like whatever, it's fuel. It's just not gonna make me feel as good as I want to. It's not gonna I'm not gonna be holding myself to the standard I want to if I bring that food into my house.
I think that's such an important point. And I think part of the challenge we have as a society is so many foods have added sugar because it makes it taste better. It's
Yeah.
really cheap. And once you kind of get used to that sweet flavor, when you don't have it, it tastes funny for a while until you reacclimate, right?
I totally get a sugar withdrawal. Yeah.
And I kind of went through that same thing. Like I used to eat a lot of stuff with sugar, and when I didn't, it didn't taste good because I was so used to that sweet. Now I kind of more like you, like, oh my gosh, that's got a lot of sugar in it. I don't know about that.
Yeah.
But it takes a
Even
little while to reacclimate, right?
yeah, and you can still have like sugar from fruit is I think is totally good for you still, but there's a line and there's a limit. Like you don't want to have fruit with every single meal because it's still sugar is sugar. It's gonna be harder for your body to digest. Um, so and you could swap out too, like instead of adding like I don't know, a refined white sugar into your coffee, you can add in like a maple syrup, which is completely natural.
Or honey.
So yeah, or honey even. Yeah. I didn't say honey because I put it in my coffee this morning and I didn't taste it. Maybe I
Oh,
didn't put it but I like the maple syrup tastes better in my
I
coffee.
love maple syrup. I grew up in New England, and that's one of my
Oh
like
yeah.
fond memories of going and getting the fresh maple syrup out of the vat. And one of the things
Yeah.
I miss about not eating breakfast is like the pancakes with the maple syrup. But
Yeah.
Sometimes I'll have that for dessert for dinner if I make pancakes for the kids in the
Totally
morning.
fair. Yeah. Oh, I love that. It's great.
But we're talking about getting the sugar out. I remember when I started drinking coffee, I didn't like the taste, so I'd have latte and I put a lot of sugar or honey in it. And then over time, I started taking out the sugar or the honey, and then I ended up just taking out the milk. And I was like, oh, I actually like the taste of this coffee. Maybe just because I'm older or it's better coffee. I don't know. But now if I put sugar in my coffee, I'm like, ooh, this is way too sweet.
Exactly. And your body, it'll adjust. And you kind of almost need to push yourself for, like, I would say those first 30 days to really limit it. And then once you make it past that point, you can slowly add it in every now and again. I wouldn't add it into like an everyday occurrence in your diet, but like treat yourself to like a treat every now and again. Like, you really want to be that person who misses out celebrating or enjoying a birthday cake with your family because you're going to be so strict on the little bit of sugar you're going to have from it. No, but like, it all comes down to how we speak to ourselves at the end of the day. And like, if you're going to be so mean to yourself after having that piece of cake, no, maybe it's not worth it. Again, it depends on each person, but that's why, like, I preach like this non-restrictive approach. And that's why I have my own podcast. It's called Diet Starts Never, because your diet, or we think like diet is something that we're supposed to do to lose weight, but it's just your lifestyle. It's how you eat. Like, a vegetarian eats a meat-free diet. Like, I eat a non-restricted diet. And yeah, I do eat majority clean foods all of my week. And then on the weekends, maybe I'll treat myself a little bit more, but it just all depends how you want to live your life, what feels good for you. It took me a really long time to get to this cleaner whole food diet. I used to
Mm-hmm.
think like, all right, if it's my macros, great, I can eat it. Um, and then I didn't feel so good. And then I ended up gaining weight and my face was really swollen. My body was really swollen. I was up 15 pounds on the scale from just like eating food that didn't serve me, which is crazy. And I was still in a calorie deficit too. So just putting that whole food in your body can seriously change your life.
Well, I think there's a lot of important points you raised there, but I want to go back to the 30-day stretch of you kind of have to.
Yeah.
I don't like the word detox because it implies all kinds of woo-woo nonsense that doesn't actually exist. But I think there is sort of this reprogramming of our taste buds that has to happen and reprogramming of our body when we decide we're going to eat cleaner. And it is going to be weird and frustrating for a couple of weeks. And then I think, as you and I have experienced, you just feel so much better. And then you notice if you have that cookie or that Reese's that you don't feel so good.
Yeah,
We kind of made it over into that other side where you want to eat clean because it just makes you feel better. And
exactly. With this whole 30-day thing, like, it's a really big perspective. It depends how you go into it. Like, if you go into it and say, I'm going to detox for 30 days, and then after the 30 days, like, I'll probably just like say fuck it and go back to, I'm sorry, Chris, and go back to eating sugar again. Like, you have to genuinely want to. You have to have the mindset that you're making a lifestyle change. You're doing this for nobody but yourself. If you fail or if you add sugar back into your diet, like, you're not hurting anybody but yourself. And like, it's okay if you do, but like, just know, like, you have to hold yourself to that standard. You have to make the decision that, like, this is a lifestyle. I'm not doing this just to look good. I'm doing this to live a really long life that I can feel good and do anything. Like, I want to be the person who can like climb that mountain you want to go climb. Like, you want to go on a long hike? Sure, I'll be there. You want to race? I'm going to be so much faster than you. You can't do that with crappy food in my body.
you and I, and probably a lot of people listening, are those people who are like, oh, okay, I'm going to do this because we're going to race and I'm going to beat you and blah, 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 blah. But you don't have to
Yeah.
be like that type A. It might just be like, hey, I want to be able to enjoy time with my grandkids, or
Right.
I want to like be able to travel in retirement and not be homebound, or I just want to wake up in the morning and feel good, which to me
Mhm.
is just the big blessing. Like
Yeah.
waking up, walk the dog,
Yeah.
go to my computer, actually feel good and engaged,
Right.
work
Like, back
out,
to work.
right?
Yeah.
It's like this is so much better than stuffing a burger and fries and a Coke in my face and wondering why I don't feel great.
Exactly.
and not being able, and then you kind of see so many folks in society who just can't really do very much. They can't enjoy their lives properly because they're not fueling themselves well. And I think
Yeah.
it's a really uphill climb because, a lot of the stuff we're talking about, you're just scratching the surface of what you do for people,
Right.
but it's a lot. Like, you have to put some energy and effort into this. It's not the default choice
Yeah.
well, unfortunately. So speaking
An
of
effort.
of what you do for people, if people want to learn more, they can catch your podcast, Diet Starts Never. Where else can they reach you?
So I post on Instagram every day. You can go on there, shoot me a message if you want more details on like tracking macros and understanding kind of where to start. I can hook you up with some resources on there. And I have a TikTok as well. My Instagram content and TikTok content's a little bit different. So if you have both, I definitely would shoot me a follow on there so you can get all of it.
And what are the respective handles on those platforms?
They're Rachie Joe. So RACHIEJO.
Okay, great. And of course, those links will be in the show notes, but I want to make sure people can find you. Rachel, thanks so much. It's been a pleasure. And I hope that for folks listening, not that I have perfected this by any means, but I've made some major changes in how I fuel myself over the past decade. And it's one of those things where I used to make fun of old people who are careful about what they ate. And I'm like, why didn't I do this sooner? This is so much better. Cheers, Rachel. Thank you. Thanks for listening. Drop an iTunes review or a review wherever you listen to this podcast. If you've got a friend who would benefit from this episode, let them know about it. If you've got a friend who wouldn't benefit from this episode, but you just haven't talked to for a while, now's a great time to give them a call. Thanks for listening. Until next time.